Hi everyone, I'm Jo and hopefully technology is going to work for me tonight. I've never done a Facebook Live before, so all going well, we'll get through this quite short presentation. I think probably only be about 20 minutes long, apart from questions. So yes, my name is Jo, and before we get started, just a content warning. This talk will reference the death of a dog, infant death, maybe parent death, and pet euthanasia, which some people might find distressing. So my background, well, I live in Invercargill in New Zealand, which is almost at the bottom of the world, and right now it is 9 o'clock at night on Sunday. When I was 9, I desperately wanted a pony. It was the thing I wanted most in the world, and I used to spend every Saturday reading the paper, seeing if there were any likely prospects. My parents bought me a Pembroke Welsh Corgi, so you can see the resemblance, I'm sure. And anyway, Jasper was the start of my life with dogs, and he was with me for a long time. I have been a voluntary club trainer for close to 20 years, although I don't really like the label trainer. I prefer to think of myself as a coach. I train my own dogs, but I help other people train theirs. About 5 years ago, while I was scrolling through my Facebook feed one night, I saw photos on another local trainer's page where all the dogs were wearing check chains or choke chains or slip chains, whatever you want to call them. And as a crossover trainer, I knew that there was a better way. So I decided to explore becoming a private dog trainer. I bought my domain name within a few days, and that's about canines. And a few weeks later, the Karen Pryor Academy announced that they were going to run the very first professional dog trainer class in New Zealand. So I applied, was accepted, and then, maybe spent some retirement funds on the course. But that course was life-changing for me. It gave me a lot of confidence, a lot of skills, and it was also really great for Maisie. She was my canine training partner, and her confidence just grew many-fold over the course of that 6 months. I got into dogs or dog training primarily because my dog at the time, Gypsy, who was a rehome from the SPCA, chased my neighbour's kids up a tree. They had pink hunting dogs, but they'd never been treed by their dogs. So I rang all the clubs on, it was a Sunday, rang all of them in the area, and the first one I got into got me into a class. And that was also my introduction to competitive dog obedience, which is one of my passions, as is Rallyo. I'm a Dogs New Zealand judge for both of those codes. I recently discovered scent work, and I'm also a judge for that. And now a new tiny obsession is tracking, or man trailing as it might be known in other areas, which is a nice adjunct to scent work. We share our lives with 4 Australian coolies, Maisie, Enzo, Zelda and Tahi, although Tahi technically belongs to my husband. He thinks Tahi does like to hang out with me, I guess, because I'm here all day. In a moment of madness at the end of the first virtual dog conference, I volunteered to present something at a future event, which turns out to be this one. Perhaps it would be something about raising a dog sport puppy, educating Zelda, or nail care, one of my things, or even my Karen Pryor Academy journey. But no, for whatever reasons, I decided on grief. This short talk, or more properly appropriate ramble, is largely based on 2 blogs that I wrote about a year after my best boy Oscar died. And that time was quite heartbreaking for me. But this topic goes back a long way further than that for me. It's something I've been keenly interested in for 29 years. And it all started with the unexpected and sudden death of our newborn daughter after a very traumatic birth. Naively, I thought, well, I didn't really think, that in first world countries, babies and children didn't usually die before their parents, and I certainly didn't think it would happen to me. The Queen said that 1992 was a horrible year, and she is not wrong. And having experienced this tragedy, it's not something I would wish on anyone. In the aftermath of Rose's death, I joined SANS, or Stillbirth and Newborn Death Support. And joining SANS introduced me to other parents from all walks of life with similar but different stories. And I learned a lot about what really mattered to bereaved parents and others. I also created a rule, which I called Rose's Rule. If you're important in my life, I will share Rose's story with you. If you're not, I won't. So I guess you are all quite important. I should say that time after Rose's birth and death, if I didn't have an older child, I wouldn't have actually got out of bed in the morning. I remember the Spanish Olympics were on at the time, staying up all night watching the Olympics because that was all I could function in doing. My dad died in 1997. It wasn't entirely unexpected. He'd been ill with cancer for some time, although that was in remission, and he suffered a cardiac arrest. And I don't really remember, looking back, how I felt. We weren't particularly close. It was sad, and I deeply cared for him, but I think I was sadder for my mum. And I look back, there will always be regrets, but you can't change the past. We all know that dogs' lives seem unfairly short in comparison to our own. Most, if not all, of our pets will die before us. We know this, but we usually put it to the back of our mind and get on with life. And to be honest, it doesn't pay to dwell on it. Rather, we just need to enjoy each day with our dog. So far, 9 of the dogs that have shared our lives here, my family, have died. And all but 2 were euthanized for old age related health conditions. And I just want to quickly talk about 3 of those dogs. So the first one was Max. Max was a rehome, a rescue from the SPCA in Wellington, New Zealand. He was, I can't remember now, I think he was about 2. And he was a Mastiff Boxer Cross. He was a lovely boy. But 3 months into his life with us, he suddenly collapsed on a Sunday, and we rushed him to the after-hours vet. We expected to pick him up the next day and take him to our own vet. The vet at the after-hours clinic couldn't, for whatever reason, she couldn't get the x-ray machine to work, and so we were going to take him to our own vet for further assessment. However, she rang us in the morning to say that Max had died overnight, and she sought permission to do a very quick little autopsy and discovered that Max had had a diaphragmatic hernia that had ruptured, possibly as a result of being hit by a car before we got him, and it healed, but just running around playing with the children, he'd permanently ruptured his diaphragm. And that was horrible. It was particularly horrible for Chris because Max was his dog. But we'd had no time to prepare. We didn't know that he was going to die. And I can remember walking the children to school and thinking, I remember now, this is what a broken heart feels like, because it really did feel like my heart had been broken again. After Max, we got Flynn. My friends at the dog training club decided I needed another dog in my life, and so Flynn joined our family. Flynn was a Welsh Springer Spaniel. He was 8 months old. His first family were moving to Australia and they couldn't take him with them. And Flynn was a bit of a hard case. He didn't really grow up till he was nearly 14, about 2 weeks before he died. And he loved to jump. And he was very creative in everything he did, in obedience and in agility. And I think that if there'd been points for creativity, and particularly in agility, Flynn would have been a grand champion. Anyhow, my reasoning at the time, or my thinking at the time, was it would be wonderful if Flynn could die doing what he loved, which was jumping. And towards the end of his life, when he was still going to events, I used to have a black bin bag in my car in the unlikely event, as it turned out, that he would die, so that I could just pop him in there and take him home. It turned out that Flynn developed acute renal failure, was hallucinating, and had to be euthanized. Euthanasia means a good death. And all our other dogs, the deaths have not been unpleasant from our perspective. Flynn's was pretty awful, and I don't think that he knew anything or felt any distress, but it was distressing for us. Nearly 4 years ago, my best boy Oscar became suddenly unwell. We thought he'd developed, once again, gastric ulcers. We weren't sure. He was at the vets, and my last memory of Oscar was giving him omeprazole because the vet didn't want to. Oscar was head shy. He trusted me enough, even though he didn't like it, he trusted me enough for me to give it to him, and it was not fun. And then the vet rang us the next morning to say that Oscar had died overnight alone in his kennel at the vet's. I don't believe that he was in pain. I had quite a lot of pain relief, but once again we were unprepared, and it was a real shock. And it was devastating for me. This was my dog that I was doing competitive rallyo with. He had achieved RAE2. I had planned to put him into the highest test of obedience. I had all these plans, and they were gone. It probably took me 6 months to come back to having some semblance of normality. And it was quite devastating for my younger dog, Enzo, who was just over a year old when this happened, and impacted him quite dramatically, and that I didn't give him the attention that he needed at the time. But that's life, and there's no regrets, and you just have to get on. Get up each morning, the sun will still rise. So no matter the circumstances of your dog's death, we will always feel pain and sadness and loss. That's what grief is. Now, I just want to touch very briefly on the subject of behavioural euthanasia. It is fortunate that I haven't had to address this in my own life or with my own dogs, but there is no doubt that behavioural euthanasia is the elephant in the room. And I will go on to say one other thing, actually, it's just occurred to me. I think that death in Western cultures is like the new pornography. People don't talk about it. We all act like we're immortal until something tragic happens. We're perfectly prepared to talk about all sorts of different sex acts and inclinations, but you start talking about death and immediately people change the subject. And I think behavioural euthanasia for dogs particularly is a really difficult subject for a lot of people. And I'm sure that other people have covered it at this conference, but I just quickly want to cover, just very quickly. Typically, behavioural euthanasia falls into two categories. The first category are those dogs that really struggle to live in today's life. They struggle with the environment, with sound. They're fearful and anxious and stressed by their environment, and their owners and vets have run out of all medical options to help them. And it may be because they don't, their owners don't have the resources to, and I'm talking mainly about money, but they might not even live near a behavioural veterinary behaviourist. The other group of dogs are those who present as a very real danger to society, and for whom there are also no more options. I don't want to get into a debate about whether all dogs can be rehabilitated. I was part of the my local city review of euthanasia and rehoming from the Pound, and I know that there are a lot of people who feel that all dogs can be rehabilitated, but their owners may not have the capacity or the capability or even the access to the necessary resources to help them out. And if we look at rescue organisations, they have a duty of care to society as well, and we can't be putting dogs back into society who may present a risk, particularly to children or other vulnerable citizens. And as a trainer, it is not my job to tell pet owners what they should do with their overly anxious or dangerous dog. I might have an opinion, but I won't share it. Sadly, that is the choice and responsibility of the dog's owner. And it's a huge burden for some of them, probably most of them. Giving your vet permission to euthanize an otherwise healthy dog brings with it guilt, a lot of guilt. And I was recently talking to a friend who got a puppy last year, a border collie. She had been looking forward to it. It was a sports dog prospect. And the puppy was quite nippy and when he was young, but he never grew out of it, despite my friend spending a lot of time and money working with a behavioural vet and also with a very experienced force-free trainer. Her puppy didn't improve. In fact, he got worse. And it got to the point when he was about 10 months old that he tried to bite her, attack her through a gate. And she just went, enough is enough. I can't cope with this any longer. She had an older dog. She lives by herself. It was just a bridge too far. And so she very sadly made the decision to euthanize her dog. And it still really plays on her mind. So we need to be really mindful of that and of those people. More often than not, it's not the owner's fault that their puppy or dog has insurmountable behavioural issues. All owners make the best decisions they can with the information they have at the time. The thing is that we can experience grief for other losses too. The loss of a job, which is probably quite common during these really uncertain times. The loss of a relationship, the loss of a home. And mostly as we age, we associate grief with the death of someone we love. And it's ironic that today my mother has lost two of her oldest and dearest friends for different reasons. They both died, one this morning and one this afternoon. And for her, that's a double hit. Over my lifetime, I've learned a thing or two about grief and no doubt will learn more. I'm obviously no spring chicken. So here are some of the things that I've learned, particularly to do with pet grief, but they can be applied to any type of grief. The grief you experience with the death of a dog or other loved pet is real grief. In some cases, it could be harder than what we experience when a loved human dies. Perhaps that is because, with rare exceptions, there is no culture or ceremony around the death of a dog. There's no public death notice, no funeral service, no bereavement leave. And while some non-dog owners might disagree, we know that our loved dog was never just a dog. It hurts a lot. Grief is not a linear process. I'm sure many of you have heard of the 5 stages of grief, and I have to check them out here: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Here's the thing. While many people will experience these, you don't necessarily do them in order or just once. You might even skip one or two. And you can go back and forth and even remain in one state for longer than others might think is socially acceptable. When Elizabeth Kubler-Ross developed this framework, she never intended it to be a rigid tool that we must follow in set order. That was never the plan. The stages were developed so that we could identify our emotions and put them into context for the death or whatever other loss we were experiencing. However, there's always a but. If you are struggling with things after any loss, please seek help from your doctor or a trained grief counsellor. Grief is very personal. Your grief is unique to you. Mourn the way you want to, create a slideshow, post an obituary, share your experiences with empathetic family and friends, or just grieve privately. There are no rules, no matter what society or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok tell you. Do what feels right. Do what feels right for you, and take as long as you like. Here's the clincher. You will never get over it. There is no coming to terms with it. There is no closure. These are just naive words, often spoken by journalists who just don't know what else to say, and it really irks me. Like when talking to someone immediately after there's been some tragic event, and they say to those that have witnessed it or who have had people involved, "How do you feel?" Dumb beyond words. But in time, you will get acceptance. The death will become a thread woven into the fabric of your life. It will still be there, and it can surface at any time. The trigger could be a special date, a song, a smell, or even an advert on TV. I can't watch any dogs movies at all. I know how most of them end, the dog dies. I know what I'm be like. And I recall when my youngest daughter, Tessa was, I think, 10. She wanted a movie. She wanted to get 8 Below, which is a story about huskies in the Antarctic. Bad decision. At the end of that viewing, only one child was not crying. However, the grief, when it resurfaces, aside from that, and yes, I did cry, you need to embrace it. It's, after all, grief is the last act of love. There is no doubt grief will change you. It may not make you a better person, make you emotionally or mentally stronger or more empathetic, but it will change you. That is part of being a very mortal human being. Before Rose was born, I was a bit of a Pollyanna. Everything was wonderful. Oh, excuse the dogs barking. After her death, I became quite absolute and blunt. With time, sorry, a lot of swearing now. With time, I eased up, but I know that shit does happen. So here are some ideas that can help you make it a little bit more bearable for yourself. Firstly, if you can, cut some of your dog's hair or ask for some of their ashes or take paw prints. These can then be used in the creation of special mementos like memorial jewellery or artwork. When Oscar died, I forgot to ask about ashes, but I did get some hair cut and I got that created into a very special ring. I took a lot of hair out actually, and there's still a lot there, so I may in time use it for something else. Create a slideshow. I haven't quite got round to doing that for Oscar. I've got all the photos and I found the music, but I know that when I do it, even now, nearly 4 years later, I will cry a lot, and I need to be in the right place and the right frame of mind to do that. I just discovered a new song actually. I have quite a vast selection of what I call funeral songs. And the one I've recently discovered is not necessarily a funeral song, but I liked it because it was used in a video for a course, advertising a course, and it was a dog course, and I liked it, and it's called Better Place by Rachel Platten. The one I particularly like for Oscar's slideshow at the moment is Keep Me in Your Heart by Warren Zevon. You could also get a special artwork created. Tessa commissioned us a very special portrait of Oscar after he died, and up the back behind me, other side, no, over here, you can see, backwards, there's a photo of Oscar. She took that photo and took it to an artist and created and got an oil painting made of him, which is over on the wall here. It's very special. You could get a tattoo. I'm not actually a tattoo person, but a lot of my friends have got tattoos to remember their dogs that have died. One of the things we did when our children were small was to donate a children's book on death or grief to their preschool or school library. And I have a couple here that are particularly pertinent, maybe to dogs. And I'll put them in the notes later. One is, and this will be backwards, oops, I Will Always Love You by Hans Wilhelm. Oops. And the other one is, oops, Heaven by Nicholas Allen. So moving on to the next part of this, what can you do if the dog of someone you care about dies? It can be really, really hard to know how to help them. First thing is listen. You don't have to say anything. In fact, often it's best not to say anything. Just actively listen. Don't judge. Turn off your phone. Be attentive and don't stare off into space. And try not to yawn even if you're really tired. Be kind and empathetic. Please don't share your own stories of grief. And if your friend asks, remember this is all about them and not about you. Don't monopolise the conversation with your own stories about your dog and how you felt and everything else. Let your friend work through their grief at their own pace. If you're worried about their mental or emotional health, help them to seek professional help. That's really important. Just be there for as long as your friend needs you. Your support may be needed in the weeks and months after the death when it seems that everyone else has forgotten them. And for those of us that have lost dogs, it's those special things when people talk about your dog later on that really makes a big difference. Some practical things you can do is just say, I'm sorry, or thinking of you, or I'm here if you need me, or, you know, Buddy was an amazing dog. Send flowers. I know they die as well, but flowers are a beautiful way to show that you care when you have no words. Here in New Zealand, we have a plant called the Chatham Island Forget-Me-Not, and it's a perennial, so it lives for a long time, and it's something that I often give to people who are grieving. It's very special for me. It's a special plant. Take them some home baking. Surely nothing says I love you more and care for you than a batch of chocolate brownies or fruit cake or biscuits or even fudge, assuming that they can eat these things. So obviously always factoring in there if they've got any special dietary requirements. Find one or more photos, even from Facebook, print them and frame them and give them to your friend. And I did this to my friend Lynn. Her dog, Chapel, died very suddenly. He was out running and hit a tree and died instantly. And I downloaded some photos from Facebook. I didn't tell her what I was doing. I printed them and framed them and gave them to her. And you don't need to say anything, you just need to give it to them. It's just about showing that you care, and it doesn't need to take a lot of effort. Promise yourself that you will touch base with your friend once a week or a month. Doesn't need to be much, a quick phone call, a text message, personal message via Messenger, an email, or if you're passing, just pop in. And you don't even need to talk about their dog, just pop in and just say hi. Use the name of their dog. Share stories of their life and acknowledge how important that dog was to your friend. And even now, Oscar's name comes out when I'm talking about one of the other dogs. He's always there. It's not intentional. I just go to talk about Enzo and say Oscar. Send a card or even an old-fashioned letter sometime later when you know that other support might have petered out. It's a tangible thing that you can do to show your friend that you are still remembering them and thinking about them. Invite your friend to join you on a dog walk or a dog sport event if that's what they're into. A lot of my friends who have dogs, we do dog sport. And this is so they can hang out with dogs and get a fur fix. But don't be offended if they say no. It just might be too soon. Lastly, please, please, please don't use cliches or dumb statements, even if they're well-intended or true. And if you find you're about to say one of the following, best you shut up. Many grieving people would find them hurtful or offensive, and these are the ones, and these were said to me as well when Rose died. It was for the best. It is a blessing. Not sure how the death of a baby could be a blessing. Buddy had a long and wonderful life. Try to think about something else. You'll have more time now. And this is my pet hate. And this similar type of thing is said to parents who have lost a baby as well. You can always get a new puppy or have a new baby. Would we say that to someone who had just lost their partner, that they can just pop out and get a new one? I don't think so. Remember that the grief that follows the death of a loved dog can be really hard to navigate. Your friend needs someone who recognises their experience as unique and real and who will help them on their journey. So, in 4 words, just 5, just be a good friend. That's it. Thank you, people. Hope you could understand the Kiwi accent. And I don't know if there are any questions. I don't know how to see them. But anyway, thank you for taking the time, and I hope this is helpful to some of you. If there are any questions, I'll answer them underneath in this event. And if you want any books. So I've got quite a collection of books about death. I'm happy to share those titles with you as well. So thank you, people, and enjoy the rest of your day. For you, for me, it'll be go and see what the canine rebel are doing, and then heading off to bed. Bye.